whereas we have the others. So, there's no guarantees of them, I don't think. If I was starting now, I'd be starting from a point where I want to take him on. But I was on early, so I don't want to take him on. That's kind of where I'm at with the race, really.
Yeah.
Okay, Coral Cup, which is, you talk about horse races that you find tough. I've found that tough. This one tough over the years. I've had some successes, but I've had the complete blanks as well. This one and the county's probably more so. The county's probably been my toughest race over the years. Last year didn't have a great Coral. The year before I had a really good Coral. So, I tend to be a bit in and out with the race. But generally, you're looking for a horse that's not had any more than 9 runs, so pretty unexposed. All of the last 14 had no more than 4 runs for the season, and there've been some that have been chasing at some point in the season as well. I've not had a chance to look through that at all. 10 of the last 12 had previously run at Cheltenham, so again, comes back to that good Cheltenham form being important. 7 of the last 8 were either Irish or Nicky Henderson. So Henderson really does target this race, but it's either him or an Irish winner generally. And Henderson's course winners have a really good record in the race, so it's worth just a check in terms of what he's run here previously. Generally, they've not won more than 1 handicap hurdle previously. So 16 of the last 19 had won 1 race during the current season. So that's quite a big stat with those kind of numbers. 11 of the last 16 were second season hurdlers. So the ones that weren't were Dame de Compagnie, William Henry, Diamond King, Son of Flicker, and Burnt Oak Boy. So interestingly, of the last 16, no novices. So second season hurdlers or older generally. It's 21 years since a novice has won, by the way. So they've either placed at a previous festival or they've been unplaced in the graded novice hurdle or have won 1 race this season. That's the overall profile for a horse. And if it's got headgear on, it's got to be first-time headgear or a Henderson horse. So some fairly deep stats there. Of the Henderson horses, by the way, we've got 2 that would interest me. He's got 4 or 5 entries, I think, but 2 that would interest me. One he said is going to the mare's race, which is Marie's Rock. I think she's still really well handicapped, and I think they might be tempted to come here still. Despite saying that they're going to the mare, so she wouldn't be able to place, and I think she'd have a very good chance now she settles. The other one is No Ordinary Joe. And No Ordinary Joe's got a letter in front of his name last time, which is a bit of a concern. But he has to be a really, really well handicapped horse. He ran in the Greatwood, so obviously this would be a step up in trip. But he's bred to want to step up in trip. And if you're prepared to ignore that 1 race, I think he's a very well handicapped horse. Then you've got Willie, who's also got a very good record in the race. He's got a fair few in there. The ones that would interest me, the older horses, Whiskey Sour. The other one that I'm not sure where this one's going to end up, but this would be the race I'd prefer it to end up because I think it wants to step up in trip. It's had a fair amount of time out, but Willie's the one to get a horse ready, after the best part of a year missing. That's Ganapathy. So I think he would be interesting for this. And I couldn't ignore State Man if he turned up in this race either, although he's a novice and I'd prefer him over 2 miles, I think. But I'd kind of have to back him if he did turn up in this. Elliot's got some that have to be of interest. He said Queensbrook goes to the Mare's Chase. I think she's ridiculously well handicapped, and I'm not sure she will go to the Mare's Chase. I think he will be very tempted to bring her to this race.
Do you think she'll still be well handicapped after the run this week?
Yeah, look, to be fair, I do, because I think she's just well handicapped anyway. I think she's got plenty of room in her mark. What's she going to get for the run this week, finishing second? 3 or 4 pounds, maybe £5 max. She's got some UK
I'm
to go, but
guessing was 131. I reckon she's probably going to go £3 or £4 an island, maybe £4. I think she, for me, if she can get under 140 or even 140, I think she's of serious interest.
Yeah, me too. And that you're pretty much on the money in terms of my thoughts there. The only thing I would say is that they've got Grand Roy in there, and Grand Roy is obviously fancied and has been backed. So, will they want to run both when they've got? Having said that, they've also Party Central is also theirs, isn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's novice though. So
she'll be she's novice.
So Queen's Brook, obviously is a single horse in the mares, so that probably will add to the thinking to go there, I suppose. Grand Roy, obviously himself, you, I, and Kev actually talked about him when we weren't on the podcast last week, and I think you guys were probably a bit keener on him than I am, but I'm kind of coming around. I think I haven't backed him yet, but I probably will. St. Felician is probably the one that is the most interesting to me of Gordon Elliott's horses, because there's no other option for him in terms of entries. So it appears he's coming here, which is interesting. Then you've got a couple of Dan Skelton horses, which you've got to consider. I'm assuming Langerdown will go to the Martin Pipe, but he could come here conceivably, and it'd be very interesting here as well as the Martin Pipe. There is the possibility that they could. In fact, it's almost certain he goes to the Martin Pipe now, isn't it? Because the worst he's going to get is a £5 penalty, and the worst if he did try to go to the what's it called? What's the race? Sundown Imperial Cup.
Imperial, yeah.
So he'd be worst case 145 anyway. So you'd think it was an nailed on certainty that he goes to the Martin Pipe. But Dan Skelton's also got Unexpected Party in this, who I think is good in his own right. And there's a few Irish horses that you've got to consider. I suppose Winter Fog could come here rather than the Temps. You'd think he's well handicapped. The Devil's Coachman we discussed last week, definitely of interest. The fact that they're going back over hurdles and going to 2 miles 5, and it's a JP horse, you can't ignore that, can you? You really can't ignore that. And he's very unexposed. 5 o'clock's entry was interesting, I thought. Back over the trip that he ran in the Martin Pipe over, but he's had 2 years out, so that'd be some feat from Willie Mullins, wouldn't it, if he could pull that off? But he's a Willie Mullins horse, so you can't ignore him. Grand Jury, who seemingly is going nowhere, has got an entry in everything. So this would be the race for Grand Jury, I suppose. He could also go to the Pipe. But the feeling you're getting from connections now is that he's not going to one of the graded races. So, you'd like to think he's going to turn up in a handicap, one or the other, either here or the Pipe. Tristan Davis has got a couple of horses that I think are of interest. Gower Road. I probably marginally prefer Guard Your Dreams, actually, of his two. And Guard Your Dreams, I think, is the bigger priced of the two. I like all that course form that Guard Your Dreams has got. Another JP horse, Camprond. It's been put away for better ground, I'm guessing. Got plenty of experience coming out very early last year. I think he had a sort of late summer campaign, autumn campaign, ran it in October. Did he run in the November meeting as well? I think he ran in the November meeting as well. So he's picked up lots of experience. He's going to come here as a really fresh horse. But I don't think he's been missed in the market. Good Risk All that ran at Sundown at the weekend, which I thought was a very good race. And we know that original bumper that he came out of was very, very good. I think the concerns were his first couple of novice hurdles, his jumping was really poor. Couldn't really cut it at 2 miles, but since he's stepped up to 2.5 and presumably he's had a lot of intensive schooling. He's looked very good. I suppose the one concern you'd have with him is that the ground was pretty testing there on Saturday. I was there on Saturday, as you know, because obviously Jeffrey's Cross ran there, and that ground was testing. That's going to take something out of a young horse. So it did make me wonder whether the two Sam Thomas horses, him and Skytastic, who ran in Jeffrey's Cross's race, whether they might end up being Aintree horses rather than Cheltenham horses, because they might need a bit longer to recover. I suppose the other one that's been talked of is Fabulous of Nichols, who still seems to think that Fabulous is a Cheltenham horse, but I don't think he's ready for me. But that would be the very long list for the Coral. I'm not being particularly helpful there, and I'd probably not come out with any revelations really. But that'll be the list that I'll be starting from.
Just a few then.
Yeah, just a few. How about you? Anything that catches your eye?
Of absolutely no use. I did like Phil de Dairy. Obviously didn't get the entry.
Presumably
injured horse. Yeah, I'm assuming there's a setback there because it was the plan. Again, several that you named there. I think a couple that you haven't. The Shunter, he has entries all over the place again this year. He's in the Plate, the Ultima, but also race. He is currently rated 7 over hurdles. So yeah, I would be interested. Obviously, won at the festival last year. Then went on to Aintree. Came second behind Protectorat. Dropped back over hurdles. Finished third at the Punchestown Festival. I do think he's probably got more to give from that mark. Whether the handicapper, I wouldn't surprise me if he goes quite harsh on him, though. To be honest,
that's my concern. That's why I've not shortlisted him. That's why I've not shortlisted him. I'll wait. He's one of those that I'll wait until I see a mark for.
Yeah, I think if he was to surprisingly get a lenient mark and not be hiked up much, I think he's a definite one that I'll be backing. I think Kiveg on the forum raised Iron Maximus. Obviously has the form of Hillcrest, and they got boosted at the weekend. Henderson has said in this week's stable tours that he'll be Ballymore bound, but he does have the entry here. So kind of the option is still slightly open on that one. He's a novice, which, like you say, is an off-putting thing. However, Henderson himself did have Craig Niche last year, who finished second in the race, and he was a novice. So yeah, that is kind of a stat that isn't ideal by any means, but if he turned up, I probably would be backing him regardless of that.
Well, look, the Ballymore is starting to look a bit deeper now, isn't it? So
yeah,
there's reasons for him to have second thoughts.
The Devil's Coachman, he was one. Again, kind of outside the pod we raised last week. Obviously he won, but I liked his run in the week. First time stepping up to the middle distance. I backed him off the back of that. Originally, he was more of a county horse for me, sticking over 2 miles. But yeah, you have to think he's got more to give. Trainer was a bit kind of lukewarm on. He wouldn't kind of give you loads of confidence. Says he kind of wants heavy ground, probably more of a 3 miler. Obviously, we don't know what weight he's.
That's why I've been campaigning him over 2. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and he's owned by who? Let me think.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think we first got to see what mark he gets for that in Ireland, and then see what the UK handicapper does. But I think, again, depending on his mark, I backed him already, but I might go back in again if it looks fairly good. Queensbrook, definitely, it does sound like it's the mayor's hurdle for her. But like I said, yeah, if she gets in at 140 or below, she's a definite play. Party Central is actually entered here. I think she'll probably go for the Mayor's Novice, but yeah, she does have an entry. And Ganapathy would probably be the other one, like you said. He was heavily backed for the county last year. And yeah, Willie Mullins, he's got form across all races, but yeah, getting horses back off long layoffs. I think he's still a fairly big price as well. Obviously, it's the kind of horse that in the stable tours you hear nothing about until very close to the race. But yeah, I think he's still a fairly big price, non-runner, no bet.
Well, I think Ganapathy was something like 5-1, 6-1 at one stage for the county. He did drift, but he was really short at one stage.
Yeah, I think a few days before he was just hammered in the betting.
He was.
Obviously didn't materialise, but how often do we see these horses kind of the money comes to them in one race and then another festival comes by and they kind of pop up again. So yeah, he wouldn't be surprising at all. But I would agree that it's a very wide. It's probably the most open handicap of the festival because you just get all sorts. I think Kev, obviously not on today, he said it recently, where you get every angle. You get novices, you get experienced horses, you get horses stepping up, you get the older ones, you get the classy horses. Just you can kind of spot the trainer angles and that, but the profile of horse could just be absolutely anything. So it's a tough one to nail down.
Well, I mean, it is, and you look at some of the horses that in fact, I mentioned some of them before. The likes of William Henry. I think I 28-1 or something. Dame de Compagnie, from nowhere really. She no real form beforehand, but Henderson and JP, and she was actually reasonably well found in the end, I suppose. But she was trading at quite a big price for a long time beforehand. Burnt Out Boy, big price. Sort of Flicker, big price. Diamond King, he was found in the market, but you look at those kind of horses, the sort of more exposed horses, they're actually quite hard to find because there are lots of exposed ones in that entry list. So
yeah,
you're doing quite well to find some of those, I reckon. But it just shows it's worth spending that time looking at some of the horses that people would regard as rags because they're actually not. But then the other side of me says you look at the handicaps these days, they tend to be won with unexposed future graded horses. It's not exclusively true, but it's mostly true, and it kind of has to be a starting point, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. The bulk of the handicap winners, once the Friday's been and gone, you could probably, I reckon, look at 70% of the handicap winners, and they're going on to probably grade ones in the spring in Aintree and Punchestown. Generally,
yeah, absolutely. And the trainers already held them in that kind of regard, but because they've got so many good young horses and they're housed in so few yards, it's number one, it's the easiest way to split them. But number two, they'll group them in as groups of horses and decide which ones are being plotted where. Gordon Elliott, I think, is probably a good example of that. I don't think. I think he tends to take their first run as the indication of what he wants to do next, rather than deliberately be a bad run.
Yeah,
I think he's not as devious as people like to think he is. I think he's very smart, but he'll let the horses sort their order out themselves. And once he's got an idea of what's happened, if something's started off slowly, should we say, it makes it much easier for him to manage the mark with that particular horse. If something comes out and goes and smashes a field, there's no point even attempting to do it. So they're going to go graded. So I think his horses sort of almost self-select on the way through, and I think he decides fairly early, probably after first runs. He knows they're good enough before first runs, or he suspects they're good enough after first runs, but he makes the decision after that first run, generally, I think. So Willie tends to be, much more open in terms of the way that he operates. But, you look at, Willie Mullins doesn't really have anything for the handicap chases, for example. If he's got a decent horse, he'd rather just run several and graded. And as far as the handicaps are concerned, never come close in attempts. So his thing in handicaps is the 2 and 2.5 mile handicaps. It is absolutely a niche for a trainer who is so good. It's actually quite surprising. But you can focus down on 4 handicaps with Willie Mullins and forget the rest. 5, sorry, because you have to count the Birdles as well. But you can forget all of the others. Don't even bother looking at his horses. It's not worth it. Okay. Next race is the Grand Annual. So first thing is,